Hello, hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Relationships Rule. Today, I'm going to have a conversation with Coach Jim Johnson, a longtime educator, championship basketball coach, and inspirational speaker who has spent decades helping young people and leaders see what's possible for them. As I learned more about Jim's approach to coaching when we had our first conversation, I was struck by how closely it mirrors what I watched my own husband do for years, leading with care as a basketball coach, I should add, because he also was a basketball coach forever. I watched him as well, leading with care, belief, and encouragement. So today I want to explore, start with why the words that we choose can stay with people for a lifetime and how showing that you care can build long-lasting relationships and truly change or influence people's lives. Because I've seen it. I've seen it with my husband as well. So welcome to the show, Coach Jim.
Thanks, Janice. I'm looking forward to it. Should have some fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look back on your coaching career, what first taught you that your words could shape a young person's confidence for life?
Well, I was fortunate because my dad was my high school basketball coach.
Ah,
So I always admired him. He passed just over a year ago, so we had him for 90 years. So
wow.
I'm very blessed, and he was a great model for me. And I learned a lot from him, and I really aspired. I mean, I got to admit, when I was a kid, I wanted to play in the NBA, but when I
Of
actually
course.
got to college and transferred and got cut from my college team, I realized probably the NBA wasn't going to be calling. But then I realized that I just wanted to follow in his footsteps. I wanted to teach physical education because I was into,
Yeah,
fitness and also all kinds of sports. But basketball was my number one love, and that was my dream. When I got out of college, I wanted to be a full-time teacher, and I wanted.
yeah,
I coached various sports, but basketball, I wanted to be a head coach, and I became a head coach at 25, so I was pretty young.
yeah, exactly like my husband. So bizarre. Okay, but here's a little switch up that now just made me think what you said about your dad. So my husband coached our daughter.
Okay.
Okay, your dad coached you.
Yep.
Was there any nepotism, positive or negative, that came into that? Because I saw it with my husband. It's very difficult. He would not play her as much because he would feel as though the parents would think that he would.
Yeah. We had some challenges, but I think my dad was so well respected. He was such a caring man, and
Yeah.
he really because I think he was so well respected. I can't say it wasn't like that, there was some jealousies and all that, because I did play 3 years of RC, so I had a chance. But I played off the bench my first year, and then my last 2 years I started. And
Yeah.
interesting because I went to different levels. I was off the bench as a sophomore. I started, but was not the top player. And then my senior year, I was our best player. So,
Yeah.
I think that helped me immensely in coaching because I got cut from a team. In middle
Yes.
school, I was one of the last guys in the team.
Yeah.
In high school, I went from like the seventh or eighth man to a starter, but not the best player, and then being
Yeah.
the best player. So I hit a lot of different roles, which helped me immensely as a leader, in trying to lead young men
Yeah.
with my
Totally.
basketball coaching.
Interesting. Yeah. No, I know it was hard as a mom sitting in the stands saying, "Why aren't you playing her? Why aren't you playing her?" In my head, right? And but she was a good player, and he did, that same thing. She kind of progressed, which was great. So, and you've seen former players remember very specific things you've said years later, I'm sure. Why do you think certain words stick while others fade? What stays with them, or why does it stay with them? I think is even more important.
That's a really good question because I early in my career I didn't realize how much power you have with your words, and so I said some things younger in my career that I wish I did hadn't said.
Yeah.
And so I think that was a journey for me. Is I to tell you a quick story. So I became a head coach at 25, and I took over a program that wasn't very good. But I had coached the junior varsity at another school and been successful, and I thought I knew everything about leading.
Sure.
And And I did such a great job, Janice. I led the team to 17 consecutive losses.
Ouch.
And then I was in an interim position and they didn't rehire me. So I guess
Uh-huh.
in other words, I was fired. So it was
Yeah.
a pretty humbling experience. But it really, I got a nice mentor. I coached a year at a junior college with a guy named Bill Van Gundy. And ironically, for those who follow the basketball world, his two
I know.
sons
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
ended up
His
being
son's
head coaches in the NBA.
right.
And one was my age and one was actually younger than me. So
Stan Van Gundy and
Stan, yep, and
and
he's now a commentator. And
yeah.
Jeff,
And Jeff.
they
Right.
both are multiple. And Jeff's actually the associate head coach now the Los Angeles Clippers.
That's right.
That was good guidance. And then I really started to say, I want to be a successful coach. So I really started to study leadership. And
Mhm.
I talk about leadership now to businesses and teams and stuff. And one of the things that I realized is how important effective communication is. And so I really started to study how to be a better communicator because I realized that how much words do matter. And, things like being specific with your praise, connecting before you correct, just things like that. So,
Okay, so just stop there for a second. So you were coaching as a young coach or, working your way up. Were you teaching as well at that time?
when I lost that position,
Yeah.
I was actually a teacher at that high school,
Okay.
and so they eliminated everything. So the next year was very hard on my wife and I. Had just bought a small house, and so I actually got a part-time teaching job, and I was working at this junior college. So
Okay.
that it was a tough money year, but
Sure.
yeah.
Well, just for the record, I live in Canada and my husband taught school but never got paid to coach. That was
Okay,
his
yeah,
passion, right?
right,
Okay, so you're coaching and you're learning about leadership. So
right,
I did notice somewhere in my notes, in the notes that I read about you, that you studied Jim Rohn, who's
yeah,
one of my favorites. And Jim
right,
Rohn, goes way back as probably one of the first thought leaders and personal
right.
development leaders. So, was he one of the people that you were studying at that time, or was this?
Absolutely. So the two most influential people, because I became a big into personal growth. So I study, Zig Ziglar.
Yeah,
I get big into Nightingale Conan. So
got it.
like Earl Nightingale. So,
Yeah,
I used to get all those
we're showing our
programs.
age, Jim, but
Yeah, we are,
yeah,
the tape cassettes,
yeah,
things like that.
yeah.
And it's interesting. Early on, I started following Earl Nightingale and Tony Robbins and
Mhm.
Zig Ziglar, and because they were always sending these brochures,
Yeah,
I would order these things, and then they give you a 30-day warranty. So if I decided I didn't like them,
and
I ordered a Jim Rohn. I had not heard of him. Then I realized he was Tony Robbins' mentor, and then
right.
I became a Jim Rohn junk. In fact, my wife has always kidded me when Jim Rohn passed that I could take over for him because I listened to so many of his
He was the
programs.
best. He really
Yeah.
was the best.
He,
Yeah.
he
And
just, talk about your communication.
yeah.
He was so simple yet so profound. Like
Mhm.
for the example, like he said, if you want to be a good leader, study leadership. If you want to be wealthy, study wealth. And I'm like, wow, that's simple, but I'm not doing those things.
Yeah.
And
But
then,
he also tells a story so well. I was involved and still am in network marketing, and he did this CD or this tape that I listened to in my car like every day, and
yeah,
it was about the Bible story about sowing the seeds.
yeah, yeah,
And I don't know the New Testament at all, but I know that
right.
this story is about, and he'd say things in such a way that you would always laugh, like um, something about, you invite someone to a meeting and they don't show up. He'd say, "Don't go there. Don't go to that," and it was great. So I have lots of memories of him too. And he just told stories so well and taught those lessons really, really well.
Yeah,
So, so that to me is great, and the personal development piece is so good to instill in people at a young age
yeah.
that I love that. So today, like many leaders, worry about being too soft. How
Mhm.
do you respond to that when it comes to caring and accountability, and that what you teach?
So when I started to analyze, and when I talk to young leaders, whether they're trying to run a basketball program or a business, is that I think there's multiple C's, but the two that I always talk to them about is you need to be both caring and challenging. And the example for that, Janice, is that our program was not easy to play. We had very high standards. We had high expectations. We wanted to play for a championship every year, but we also, I believe, that our kids uh, bought into it because they knew that we cared about them and that we wanted the best for them. Like our mission statement for our program was to develop winners on and off the court. And I always kid leaders, you're the chief reminding officer. So you got to live the mission, share the mission, teach the mission. And that's something. So we really would get into what are the behaviors of being a winner on the court. Certainly winning the game is part of that, but are you a great teammate? Are you someone that can handle adversity when things don't go well? Off the court, are you someone that does your best academically? Are you someone that's a contributor in our community? So those things we were trying to teach every day through the game of basketball.
So keeping that in mind, I know that I watched early on when my daughter started working, getting into the working world, that her sense of team and sense of commitment and sense of loyalty was much greater than so many young people's because of her basketball career.
Right.
Did you notice that, or did you see that? Did the young people that you taught come back and say, or that coached, come back and say, "Hey, coach, can you help me with this?" Or did you see it as a natural evolution from being good team players?
Absolutely. Our players would come back after they graduated and, and attend our games and come to our practices and go to lunch with them. And, so because I think the huge thing in leadership, I was talking to a administrative conference and I kidded them that the 3 R's in education is not reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's relationships, relationships, relationships. And, that's a general thing. And I can be very frank, Janice. Early on in my career, all I wanted to do was how can I lead this team to a championship? Then I really changed when I started to learn from these masters. John Wooden, the great UCLA coach, was a guy that I studied immensely. And then as we mentioned, like Jim Rohn and all those different personal growth guys. But I realized that if I was going to build something special, that I had to build great relationships with my staff and my players and their parents, and that's all part of the deal is that, and one of the things, going back to you were talking about communication, I became much better. I get into acronyms from being an educator. It's the CQA. You're the chief question asker. And when I started to change, we had captains meetings every week, and I used to just run it. I'd have my agenda, and I didn't ask many questions.
Yeah.
And I changed that dramatically, and boy, that helped us immensely because our players felt empowered. And I think the best teams, whether it's a sports team or a business team, is when the people are empowered and you're creating leaders in your team.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. And that just made me think. So watching basketball, professional basketball, when I watch a game, I don't see it through the same eyes that my husband sees it through as you would see it through because you coached. And can you tell by just watching a team in action whether they are in sync with each other or not?
Yeah, certainly, because I watch so many basketball teams between coaching and scouting and watching games just on TV, is that the things I started, because one of the I talk to leaders about is do you really have an understanding of the characteristics of the people you want to bring on your team? And one of the things we really highlighted was that we want to we over me guys. That's why J-Mac, was someone that even though he wasn't a very good player, he served as our manager, and that's something we really. So one of the things I really observe is teams that are willing to make the extra pass, teams that really hustle and willing to dive on the floor for a loose ball. Those are the teams that I really admire because that becomes contagious. I was a big quote guy, and one of my favorite quotes I used to give my players all the time is, "Attitudes are contagious. Is yours worth catching?"
Right.
And so that's
Yeah.
something we really wanted to spread through is, this great attitude and,
Yes.
and being the best that we could every day.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's good. Okay. So I mentioned that I recognize a lot of my husband's coaching style in you when we
Mhm.
spoke. What do you think great coaches and great leaders instinctively understand about people?
What I believe they understand is that they are going to find ways to connect. And so that to do that, like one of the things I encourage leaders is you've got to, for my team, we had a number of one-on-one meetings. And, it wasn't all about basketball. I
Right.
tried to find out about their family. I tried to find out, what makes them tick. And because the more that I knew about them, and I like to give this example in one of my presentations about the fact that as you build relationships, that one of the things I talk about is the ability to build trust. And in understanding each player, there were some players that I could get on in the middle of practice in front of everybody, and they would handle it, and it would be a great lesson for all. You know what, Janice, I got to know some that couldn't handle that at all. And that was where we would go one-on-one behind closed doors. So to me, in building trust, it's an art and a science. I think you got to have a plan how you're going to build trust, but getting to know your people. So I think that's the huge thing is that they have a vision and a mission of where they want to take. They're clear about the core values with the behaviors that they want to consistently. They have clarity and communication about boundaries where they can empower people and when sometimes they're going to take control. And, there are so many leadership styles, but for example, like if there's a fire in your house, you better have an autocratic leader because you got to get everybody out. Okay. It's not time to debate or,
Right.
or talk
Exactly.
about,
Yeah.
what's the
See,
best. But,
yeah.
in most situations, the better you become. I share this with leaders all the time. When it made a big transition with me is when I continued to seek the best answer, which often was not my answer because I was listening to my players, I was listening to my staff, and that's a hard transition. Easy to say, but as a leader, in my case, a leader of a basketball
Yeah.
program, you do have an ego. You feel like you're there.
Oh, really?
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but that's
So
maturity coming in
yeah,
when you say that. When you can see that is it's not your answer isn't necessarily the right answer. That starts to become a maturity thing, I think. The other thing you said that I wanted to comment on there is when you're um, because my favorite word is curiosity. When you are curious enough to observe and learn and understand somebody from a different perspective, that's going
right.
to help all of that too, I would think, in terms of leadership.
Absolutely.
Okay, um, so we can't not talk about this story that, by the way, when this airs, is your 20th anniversary about this wonderful story that put you on the big map in the U.S. for sure. It's the JMac story. And
Right.
I think I said to you before we went on air that I just watched an interview you did the other day, I think,
Hmm.
which is for the 20-year anniversary of this story. So,
Right.
um, first, I want you to share the story. You've probably got it down pat by now,
Right.
and then I want to ask you a couple of questions about it. But it's a very special story, so please.
Sure. So, give you a quick context. Jason tried out for our JV program as a sophomore, and he was very small in stature. He was like 5'6", 90 pounds. He's on the autism spectrum. He's
Yeah,
learning disabled. Um, but my JV coach, I mentioned very briefly about the we over me, and he came to me during trials. He says, this young man, he's not a very good player, and he's got a lot of challenges, but he's a we over me, and he loves basketball because we were trying to find people that were passionate about the game. And I want to keep him in the program. So he kept him on the JVs. And I was starting to get him known because in our situation, I think in a lot of high schools, the JV and varsity play back to back. So he was on the bench for both games. And he would get pretty emotional during the JV game because he was going to their practices and getting to know the
yeah.
players. But the varsity, because he didn't really know us as well. In fact, I tagged him the nickname J-Mac because I couldn't pronounce his last name. And unfortunately, he liked it. Uh, so what I really admired about him, Janice, though, was after his sophomore season, he came to all our off-season workouts, and the kids started to really embrace him and his love for the team and stuff. So he tries out as a junior, and he doesn't make it. But I asked him to be the team manager. In fact, I'll give you a quick story that I think you'll get a chuckle out of. His junior year, at that point, Janice, I was known as the coach that couldn't win the big one.
Oh,
We would have winning season every year, and we'd lose in our postseason tournament. So at our first team meeting his junior year, he's the varsity team manager. He raises his hand, and I said, "Yes, J Mac." He says, "Coach, we know you've never won the Section 5 championship." I said, "Well, thanks, Jason, for the reminder." And he said, "But we know you love quotes, so we're going to have this quote, and it is we're going to stay focused and help you win the sectional championship." Well, his junior year, we have another good season. We go to the semifinals. Now, for the sixth time in my career, I've never taken a team to the finals, and we lose at the buzzer to our crosstown rival. And I'm devastated. I lose it at home for the first time. My wife, and she reminded me about my passion and my mission. And so I got back on. But Jason inspired me because he tries out again his senior year. I never had a player try out 3 years in a row without making it, but I just admired his desire. So his senior year, when he tries out, I said to him, "Jason, I got some good news and some bad news." And he goes, "Coach, give me the bad news first." I said, "Well, unfortunately, you're not quite good enough to make the team." And he was really disappointed. But I said, "I do have some good news." His head popped back up, and I said, "I'm going to give you a uniform and hopefully get you into our final home game where we honor the seniors." And so the interesting part, I wrote a book about it called The Coaching Miracle because Janice, and it's too long a story, but I'll just say that after our first couple games, we ran into some real adversity and divided the team. And for your listeners, think about if you've ever been on a divided team. Did you reach your potential? Probably not. And we struggled. We lost 3 of our next 5 games, and I didn't think we'd lose any. And the turning point before I get to his game is we're at a Christmas tournament, and we won in the opening round, but still didn't play well. And the whole school was really good. They beat this team by like 40 points that we had barely beaten 2 weeks earlier. So the next day, the turning point is I brought him in for a short practice. And normally we call it a shoot around, and we would go through some shooting drills and cover some plays and get ready. But I knew that wasn't going to help us because we were so divided. So I shocked them. I didn't bring any basketballs out, and I told them that I didn't want to go to the game tonight. And they looked at me, "What do you mean?" And I tried to give them a little motivation, which I think part of communication is being an inspiring speaker. But the best thing I did is I really became vulnerable, and I said to them, "Guys, I don't have the answers, but you got to be willing to share how we can unite this team." And we spent the whole hour just listening to the team. And that helped us a lot. And we had played a great game that night. We didn't win the game, but we lost in overtime and showed what we could do. So we got some momentum, won 8 of our next 9 games going into senior night, which was on February 15th, 2006. As you said, 20
yeah,
years.
yeah.
On the 13th, I gave him his first uniform. It was way too big. He didn't care. In fact, there was a rumor going around school that he slept in it for 2 straight nights. So Well, senior night, for your listeners, the way we did it is we would honor all the senior players and cheerleaders before the game, and we bring their parents out. And it always touched my heart,
Yeah.
to see this, but it was profoundly touching to see Jason now embracing his parents in uniform instead of the white shirt and black tie they always wore to the games. So my dream was I wanted to get him in with enough time so he could score a basket. But I knew also because we had had strife with the team, I couldn't put him in before I got everybody else in. So I got everybody in after 3 quarters. With just over 4 minutes to go, I thought the time is right. I turned and pointed him. He nearly ran right in the court. He was so excited.
Ah,
Then when he comes on the court, and what I didn't know, what Jason didn't know, we had this parent that was like kind of an unofficial photographer. Well, behind our backs, he made all these pictures of Jason, and they were like placards and put them on paint
yeah,
sticks. And he
yeah.
gave them to the student body. And when Jason walked on the court for the first time, they
Oh,
gave him a standing ovation. They showed, and Mr. Macho, I sit down and I start crying. I can't
oh,
believe how it was profoundly touching. Now the game begins with him in the game. The first time he touches the ball, he has a three-pointer from the right corner. He lets it go. We had a pretty good crowd, about 1,000 people there, and you could see the whole crowd stand up. Janice, he misses by 6 feet. It's not even close. It's an air.
ah.
And I kid people that I know you're not supposed to pray in the public schools, but I was praying, dear God, please help me get one basket. Next possession, he has a much shorter shot from about 10 feet, lets it go. It hits the backboard, it hits the rim, and it falls off. And the
Mm,
crowd groans. I'm thinking, all right, we're getting closer. God's
yeah.
starting to listen. Third possession, he has another three. He lets it go. Magic. It goes in. The place explodes. I'm thinking to myself, God must be a basketball fan. Not only he
Yeah.
scored, he's got a three-pointer. And then he comes down, he makes another three. And I got to fast forward and I'll finish the story quickly. 6 months after that game, Jason's idol was the late Kobe Bryant. And I kid you not, Janice, he used to sign his name Jason J. Mac Kobe McElwain. That's how much he liked Kobe Bryant.
Uh,
So he's at the ESPYs. He's up for the greatest sports moment of the year. And one of the other finalists is
wait, who is Kobe or you or J Mac?
Jason's up for this
Oh,
greatest sports moment of the year.
okay.
But one of the other finalists, there were 4 finalists for the
Okay.
award,
Yeah.
was Kobe Bryant. Kobe had scored 81 points for
Right.
in the Lakers that year, and Jason got to meet his idol, and they beat him out for the ESPY. So it was truly remarkable.
Oh,
Well, how did he do that? He didn't just make two threes. He
right.
came down, he made a couple more. And then I'll finish the story by saying the two things I'll never forget. With a minute to go, I'm sitting on the bench, tears still flowing down my face, and I get a tap on my shoulder. I look behind me. It's Jace's mother. And Janice, she's bawling her eyes
Of
out.
course
And
she
she
is.
whispers in my ear, Coach, this is the best gift you could ever give him, my son. Of course, I cried harder. I was so touched.
Yeah. So he
And then
scored what? Six
six
three
three-pointers.
pointers. Yeah.
And he actually, I'll close with this. So with 10 seconds to go, the place is in pure bedlam. And our opponent, I want to give kudos to their coach and their players. They're really good sports. They score. And that was called Spencerport High School. And our player takes it out of bounds, and he usually throws it to our point guard, but he throws it to J-Max. So J-Max dribbling down the court, and I'm seeing the clock, 8, 7. I thought they were just going to let him go in and
Yeah.
make a layup, a short shot.
Yeah.
Oh, no, he slows down. He like pulls up like 2 feet behind the arc. I'm thinking, Jason, don't shoot from there. You're going to ruin this moment. He launches this rainbow. Swish.
Fish.
I look over the whole stands right onto the floor. It was like the movie Rudy. It was
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
And our players put them up on their shoulders. And I had no idea how many points they had at that time. And our public address announcer comes on and says, the leading scorer for Greece Athena tonight, J-Mac, with 20 points and 6 three-pointers. So it was crazy.
That's amazing. So did the while he was in the game, his teammates would feed him the ball, like they were helping him achieve this goal as well, right?
You know what?
Okay.
One of the most touching things that I still cherish today, because we had some real strife, and we were
Yeah.
always talking every day what it takes to be a great team. And to me, that was the essence, because I had never asked the four players on the floor to
Yeah.
pass Jason ball. They did that out of their own
They did it
hearts,
on their own.
and
Yeah.
that was so cool. And yeah, so
It is. It's a very special story. and it went viral really before things went viral, right?
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
know that he was up for an ESPY for that story. So
Yeah.
it was all on film, obviously, then. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's amazing. And I think you did the talk show circuit too, didn't you?
Yeah, we were on Good Morning America,
Yeah.
CNN, ESPN, Oprah.
Yeah.
Jason was actually on Larry King. So yeah, it
That's
was.
amazing. Now, um, I guess the question is, what did that experience teach you about seeing potential before others see it? I don't know. Was that the case? Yes.
Yeah, it really. So there was a couple things that I did a lot of reflection, and one
Yeah.
is I really, I am a believer in God, so I think God, this is a way God could give hope to the autism community. Number one,
Hmm. Hmm.
and number two is it really made me believe, because one of my speeches, the first speech I started doing was called "Dreams Really Do Come True," because most people have a dream, but most people think they can't have their
Right.
dreams come true. And so what I did with inspirational Jason's story, and then I give keys on how you can make your dreams come true, like Jason did. So it really it made me really think that, boy, not this every dream's going to come true. That's not going to happen for anybody. But at the same time, I do believe that doing the right things like Jason did, and you're ready for I called Carpe Diem, seize the day, being ready for that, because people didn't realize all the hours Jason spent outside of practice spending on shooting.
Hmm.
When he got his opportunity, he definitely seized the day. So I think uh, we can do a lot more than we think we can when we think big and we put some consistent action together. So,
Yeah. And again, I'm going to come back to the words that we teach ourselves, the words that
yeah,
we hear others say to us. And I wrote down this, and I don't know why. Passion, perseverance, and preparation. I think those were the three things that Jason epitomized, right? And
yeah, absolutely.
probably that be ready because you never know. You never know
Right.
when it's
Yeah.
going to happen. Um, One of the things that have seen over the years that like I don't know if you live in the is it the New York area that you
Yeah,
live
we
in?
live in upstate New York, so I live in the largest suburb of Rochester called Greece.
Right. Okay. And so we live in a suburb of Vancouver, and it's a fairly big city, but
Mhm.
not by New York standards. But wherever we go in North Vancouver for years and years and years, a restaurant or a store in the community or whatever it is, hi Coach Porter, like everybody knew him. And what was I going to say about that? Oh, what I was going to say is that people come back even as in fact we went for a walk the other day and there was somebody walking towards us talking to somebody with and he had his dog and we could hear him say as we walked forward, yeah, and there's my old teacher's in this neighborhood too. And then he turned to my husband and said, hey, Coach Porter. And he said to the person he was talking to, he was my social studies teacher or something.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the thing is, they were both teachers together in the community and
Oh,
also
well, yeah.
refereed basketball in the last few years. But he remembered him as his teacher right
Right.
back in the day. So there's always that they come back, and there's that
Hmm.
feeling of pride, but also um, I don't know. It's a special person, and I think that that's you're so lucky to have that. You worked
Hmm.
hard to get it, and you
Yep.
influenced so many people's lives. And I
Right.
think that is the special thing in the end of being a good coach,
Absolutely.
right, and being a
Yep.
well-respected coach. I love it. Um, so when you're speaking to a group of business people and leadership leaders in do they and by the way, I assume today they're men and women,
Hmm.
right? um what do you get asked the most, or what comes from those people that they're asking you for your advice about?
Well, I talk about seven keys of my leadership. I talk in my championship culture, we have five keys, and some of them are overlapping. The same with my dreams. I talk about six keys,
Yeah.
and there's definitely some overlap. But I start usually with the journey by helping them think about how to lead themselves, because I don't think you can be an effective leader and lead yourself. So I really encourage people, and people have heard of this, but most people do not have a personal mission statement. So that's how I start. I really trying to get them to think about why they were put on this earth, or if you're a person of faith like me, why did God put you on this earth? So I give them some clarity on that. Then I think another thing that I have a little bit different angle that people will delve into is because I'll ask them, how important is trust in leadership or building a great culture? And it's 100%. They all say,
Of
man, where I
course.
travel to. But then I kind of shock them and I said, well, do you have an intentional plan on how you're going to build trust? And pretty much everybody says, no, I don't. And so I give them our 3-point plan just to stimulate their thinking about, because I think you have to be intentional if you're going to build trust. We talked about how important relationships are.
Hmm.
And then I talk about, how to create an edge for your organization. It depends on, like, one of the things is how do you do a better job of recognizing your people?
Hmm.
Those are some of the things we talk about. I talk about, the power of leading by example, as much as people know that, but how often that we don't do a very good job. And in fact, that was the turning point. I mentioned that I was the coach that couldn't win the big one, and we
Right.
ended up winning the championship for the first time after J-Mac's magical game.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing I learned is during that sectional tournament, because we had so much publicity and
Sure.
notoriety, is I said to myself, you know why I don't think I've led a team to a championship, even though we had some pretty good teams, is because I didn't handle the stress of a pressure game well. And I made a
Mhm.
pact with myself that I believe effective leaders are the rock during pressure. And people can feed off of that. And that's the whole dynamic I changed. And we won our first championship. And then the funny part is, Janice, after never making a final in my first 19 years. In my last 11 years, we made 8 finals and we won 6. And I think it was a big difference, because, we had certainly some talented teams, but we had talented teams before. So
Yeah.
it was really that mindset of,
Yeah.
of being the rock. And I think that's really important. And then I talk about leadership philosophy. I call it leaving a profit. Everything we touch, we want to make better, not worse. And I got big into servant leadership. And you talked about being soft. Is servant leadership is not soft leadership. It's the ability to flip the pyramid. So your mindset is you're going to serve the people that are
Mhm.
working instead of
Mhm.
them serving you. But
Right.
the other thing is, I believe the best leaders create leaders, and that's something that we took a lot of pride on our staff is to teach our players how to be leaders.
Yeah, because if you're not, if you're comfortable within yourself and you're confident within yourself, then there's no need to be afraid of somebody else one-upping you, right? You
Yeah,
want that to
boy,
happen. You want all
right.
that to happen.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we'll come to a close with this, I think. If someone listening today wants to be, I think I want to do like I want to come full circle back to how important your words are, and the fact that they're so influential in whoever you're talking to, and whatever role you're playing. So if someone wants to be more intentional with their words starting tomorrow, where should they begin?
First of all, I think you got to become a student of communication. And the thing with that is make that a study, so start to be a better listener. I think that's
Mhm.
really start. I always kidded leaders that, you have 2 ears and only one mouth, so you should
Yeah.
listen twice as much as you talk. So
Right.
I think because I know when my epiphany is that I think I became a much better leader the second half of my career, when I really started to be serious about asking questions and then being able to listen. And the other thing I think is really important is when you don't agree, that I would share with, like, a player might come in and share an idea, and I would say something like, "Hey, John, I really appreciate you coming in your idea. Unfortunately, I don't think this is right for us, and here's why." Now, he may not agree with that, but at least he got a clear explanation. Because one of the things I really talk to leaders about is clarity in communication is kindness. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to be tough at people at times, because
Right.
you have certain goals, you have certain boundaries, and if they break the boundaries and follow the rules, that there's a consequence for that, and that's and having that clarity. So, but I think that's really important, is everybody getting them on the same page, because your clarity with your communication. And communication is a daily process, and you're going to make some mistakes. And the last thing I'll say about that is, you got to be willing, when you do make a mistake, to admit it,
Right.
apologize, and make it better.
Right. Fair enough. Well, this has been amazing. I love talking to you, because I think that some of this material and some of this work that you do, because you've been around for a while, and so have I, and so I kind of like
Yeah,
that. And the world is coming back, I believe, to the importance of relationships and trust
mhm,
and all of that good stuff. So I think this is a good reminder that whether you're coaching a team, leading a business, or influencing the people around you, your words matter more than you may ever realize. Caring
absolutely,
isn't soft, it's impactful, and it's often the reason people rise to their potential. So
absolutely.
thank you so much. And to my audience, if you, where can they find you if they want to know more about you and your work? Please.
Yeah, sure. So the best way is my website. It's coachjimjohnson.com. That way I wouldn't forget it. And
Okay.
yeah, I am on the socials. I have a small team, so I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. I do a lot of work on LinkedIn. I know
Perfect.
that's
Yeah.
one of your expertise. And I do some on X and Instagram as well. So
Oh,
we post,
very good.
do a daily dose of leadership every day, and we do an inspirational thought every day. So those are kind of our consistent posts.
Perfect. Well, thank you again. And if you like what you heard, please go and find Jim and find out more about what he does and how he can serve you. Maybe you have a team that he'd be able to come and inspire with his leadership talk. And if you like what you heard, please leave a review. We love that. And remember to stay connected and be remembered. If today's show inspired you to make a new connection, why not start with me? Head over to LinkedIn and connect with me. Be sure to let me know you are a podcast listener, because I select one listener each month who connects with me on LinkedIn for a complimentary profile audit. Don't forget to stay connected and be remembered.